Welcome back. You're watching Newsx. I am Rishabh Gulati. Balochistan should never have been a part of Pakistan. Its future does not lie as a part of Pakistan. Its future lies in ending the systematic executions and genocide and outrages that have been perpetuated by the Pakistani army in that region as its own independent entity with the right of self-determination for its own people. That's what needs to happen on the larger scheme of things. But none of this can be secured by taking hostages, by blowing up railway tracks, by executing Pakistani soldiers. None of it. Terrorism is not the answer. In the scope of the past 24 hours, we've seen fresh videos that have now emerged of unpleasant, horrific things taking place. There is a battle going on whether the BLA actually released the civilians, including women and children, or were they actually rescued by the Pakistani army. A Pakistani army which has only been good for two things: creating terrorism the world over and coups in their own country, because every battle they've fought, they've lost. A Pakistani army known for its corruption, known for its ineptitude. Even when Pakistani soldiers and their biggest generals are sent off to foreign shores to fight battles in Yemen, even there they've run away. It is an army not worth its salt. It's an army that honestly even Pakistanis do not deserve. It's an army that has wreaked havoc for too many decades. But within this conversation, we need to figure out, we need to disaggregate the larger issue, which is Baloch independence and a terror attack which has served nobody's interests. When I began my career, almost 2 decades ago, I remember a very brave Baloch young woman who shot videos of the mass graves in Balochistan, unnamed gravestones, hundreds and thousands of them, of the people who have been butchered by the Pakistani state. Balochis assassinated, their political leaders, their activists hunted down from Toronto to Europe, killed by the Pakistani intelligence services. She's a brave girl, and there was no effective internet. It was literally a small SD card that had to be smuggled out of the country and through various other countries brought to us so that we could share the story of what was taking place in Balochistan 20 years ago. 20 years later, far worse has happened. Now, given the milieu, the confusion and the blood that is being spilt in the worst unhappy circumstances, the Pakistan government has an explanation to offer, and their explanation is India. So, what you're seeing on your screens right now, that's the footage that we brought out of Pakistan 20 years ago. I remember it so poignantly. The girl pointing out, standing beside all the mass graves of the people killed, executed, murdered by the Pakistani forces. Unhappy things are taking place in an unhappy time in Pakistan. Let's open up this conversation on the broadcast with me. Ambassador Baswati Mukherjee is with us. Patikrit is joining us as well. Major General Dhruv Katoch is with us. Dr. Baloch Bilal is joining us from France. Amjad Ayub Mirza is joining us to pick up this conversation as well. Dr. Bilal, here we are, sir. in an unhappy circumstance. To your best assessment, as you are seeing this from foreign waters, what is the present situation on the ground? Okay, I am told that audio connection is not through. So, let me get Mr. Mirza into this. Mr. Mirza, what is your assessment of the situation on the ground from where you are sitting?
Well, the situation on the ground is absolutely abysmal. Now, several Baloch parliamentarians from the National Assembly are are complaining that there is no law and order, and actually the Baloch members of parliament now are fearful of their own lives because they have taken oaths for Pakistan, and they see themselves as targets. So they are now coming up with these kind of statements that Pakistan has lost its war and Pakistan has no jurisdiction in Balochistan, and the Home Minister, former Home Minister of Balochistan, has also issued a statement. Others have issued statements. Situation is really bad, and I was told that corpses of Pakistani military personnel are still arriving at Quetta Hospital. And last night, I was also told by Baloch from the Zahri tribe. They told me that in Bolan, the Pakistan soldiers, when they saw the coffins, they refused to take part in the operation against BLA, and they were arrested by their commanders. They were arrested and taken away. So I don't know how many soldiers have refused, and where was it in Bolan or different parts as well. But situation is really, really bad. Pakistani people now have come to realize that the game is over. Everybody is in a state of shock. The ISPR director, General Ahmad Sharif, is being accused of lying under Chinese and American pressure, because the Chinese and the Americans have issued statements in favor of Pakistan, because they are shocked as well. You know, CPAC or whatever is over. The 1947 world order that was carved out by the British by
Okay.
uh, yeah, it's over. So that's what people think.
Okay, all right. So,
Thank
how do
you.
we then, because Ambassador Mukherjee, as we stand, okay, the Pakistani state is saying that, look, India is sponsoring terrorism in Pakistan. Now, we've responded to that obviously because we know whose DNA and whose CV actually reflects what. But in this
Exactly.
one-upmanship that is inevitably going to happen, how do we disaggregate the two between this attack which has taken place and the larger issue of what is taking place in Balochistan?
In the first place, the Pakistanis and the Pakistani deep state should look at the history of Balochistan. Balochistan was simply annexed after partition. The Balochis never wanted to join Pakistan, as you rightly corrected out in your introduction. They wanted to be an independent state. Ever since 1947, they have been exploited for their resources. Their development has been retarded. There have been horrific killings and disappearances. And as a result, the Balochis and Balochistan, which actually is almost 40% of Pakistan's land territory, if I'm not mistaken, has never felt themselves to be part of Pakistan. And the Pakistanis have just used the Balochis to exploit them, and they are treated as worse than second-class citizens in Pakistan. Therefore, I would not call the attack on the train a terrorist attack. I would call it part of the Balochi war of independence and liberation and right to self-determination. I would define what happened on the train as a logical and legitimate part of the struggle of the Balochi people to break free and also to take revenge on the horrific human rights atrocities that have been perpetrated on Balochistan and its innocent people by the Pakistani deep state and the Pakistani army, without even informing the common people of Pakistan as to exactly what is happening in Balochistan so that they are aware of what is happening. If, as our guest said, that the Pakistani soldiers, when they saw the coffins, they refused to fight, it doesn't bode well for the Pakistani deep state, because now that the Baluchi factions have united under one faction, there is going to be much, much more to come. And it is only going to be a matter of time, Rishabh, before Pakistan becomes the rump state of Punjab and Sindh and Balochistan breaks free. There is no doubt about it. When you get a professional army, that's the Pakistani army, regardless of how many wars they have lost or won, a professional army always hesitates to commit atrocities on civilians who are technically part of the people of Pakistan. This is not what a professional army is trained to do. A professional army is trained to wage war on its enemies. So its enemies are India. Now they believe that enemies are Afghanistan. So when Taliban took over, they were crowing and saying that, oh, now we're going to teach India a lesson because Afghanistan is strategic space for us to teach India a lesson. Now they say that the handlers were in Afghanistan, and now they say that the handlers are being handled by handlers in India. That's a very tall story. What they should do is to see whether they can bring about reconciliation within Balochistan, which seems impossible to me.
Yes.
To try and start a dialogue with the Baluchis. That seems impossible to me. So in my opinion, there will be many, many more such attacks. I will continue to call them legitimate attacks by the people of Balochistan through the BLA to gain their long lost independence because they never wanted to be part of Pakistan. Rishabh.
For people watching the broadcast, 10th Corps, 20th Corps, the key strike corps of the Pakistani army, whose commanders often become the future DGISIs or the future army chiefs, most of them are Punjabi Pakistanis. Most of them are first sent to serve in Balochistan, where they commit the atrocities before they are sent off to Kashmir to commit further atrocities over there. General Katoch, has the Pakistani army and the state lost control of Balochistan?
Thank you, Rishabh. Rishabh, I have been following the events in Balochistan for a very, very long time, at least for 2 decades now. The way you have mentioned, you have been following it for 2 decades also. The movement has seen many ups and downs, but I think for the first time I see a distinct difference. This was following the events of the train hijack which has just taken place, and which I presume the operations are over by now. What this has done, it has galvanized the people of Balochistan behind one common purpose. Earlier, the Balochis were fighting in their own manner, in fits and spurts for their freedom. I think now what has happened is there is a concentrated effort. The whole society is galvanized behind the movement. And I think that spells trouble for Pakistan. It is not a number of how many military people were killed or how many were not killed. I think those are simply numbers. The BLA will give theirs, the Pakistan army will give theirs. And I don't trust the Pakistan army anyway if they could not even recognize or, their people who fought in the Kargil war and who died in those battlefields, and they refuse to recognize their own soldiers. Obviously, they are not going to recognize what has happened in Balochistan. That's a given. But the impact. Now, impact I want to give you from a military angle of the Balochistan. I've studied this terrain also in very great detail. Very large spaces, railway lines, road, pipelines. There is no way in which the Pakistan military can guard them all. The entire Pakistan army put into Balochistan cannot do it. So it is a given. They are in for very serious trouble. They are not in a position, the Pakistan army is not in a position to take control of the territory of Balochistan. It's over. In my view, it is a game, set, match. It's over. This incident, why I'm very particular about this particular incident. You see, earlier when schoolboys got massacred in Pakistan, it was a serious incident, but it doesn't compare to what has happened now. In the earlier incident, it created a revulsion against the terrorists. In this particular incident, I think the people of Balochistan are coalescing together under one center, under their own authority, under their own people against the Pakistani state.
Okay.
So, just one statement I want to make, Rishabh. I think Ambassador Mukherjee is absolutely spot on when she says the only solution they have is for the people, for the authority in Pakistan to speak to the people of Bangladesh. If they don't do so, if they still keep the eyes closed, it's game, set, and match. Balochistan is a free country. Rishabh.
Okay, Bilal is with us now. Bilal, what's the information you're getting at this point of time about what's happening on the ground?
Actually, we people all know the history of the Pakistan, how they lie and how they keep lying from the decades, I start from 1971 when they were keep saying to their people, they came to the TV and they say our troops are going forward, Nusrul Fateh al Qarib, we are going to win. And we all see 93,000 pens down in Dhaka. Not only that, we come again like Siachen, Kargil, they all that. And even when you see the Pakistani military itself, when they take the oath, they say they will not be involved in the politics, but we already know how many times from the decades, when the Pakistan get birthed by British help or someone you can say, they are doing the same thing. The problem is the media is totally blackout in Pakistan. Totally blackout. Even there are some private channel, there is some hard control within even international media like a BBC Urdu, Voice of America, whatever they are.
Okay, but Dr. Bilal, my question is, are you being able to get information from what's happening on the ground? Are you being able to get information directly or through secondary sources?
They have blocked all the sources of the information. We are whatever we are getting from the ground, the BLA statement is coming on the social media. Whatever they are saying, even the BBC, the other media outlets, they are not allowed to go on the point. This is the main problem, it is not in 1971 when they say to their people they lied. They still lying, but we know they are lying because we have all other sources.
Okay, Dr. Bilal, do you think the BLA action in the hijack of this train has popular support amongst Balochis, both living in Balochistan and those like yourself in exile?
This is a simple answer to you. Just announce the referendum there, you will see the result. Just announce the referendum. Totally you will see, not only you, all international media and international countries, all other people will see what is really Baloch, the one single child is, they have a hate, How can they love a country? Their loved ones are being missing from the decades, their resources are being manipulated. They are just living a beggar.
Okay, so I'll take that answer as a yes, that there is popular support for the BLA and its actions. If the Pakistani army were to carry out retaliatory attacks, what do you think will happen then?
You cannot do, you cannot shut up someone with the barrel of the gun, They are fighting. I'm sure it will go more and more if they will not understand. Pakistan has to understand because they have signed a treaty with the United Nations. So they have to give them autonomy. They have to go to self-determination. This is the final way, like one of the participants said before. Now game is over. Honestly, I'm saying now game is totally over.
Okay, let me get Patikrit in. Patikrit, I can empathize with the cause, as I've mentioned. It's difficult for me to empathize with women and children taking hostage for people can't get stuck in the crossfire or whatever the cause might be. But has Pakistan lost control of Balochistan?
Rishabh, first and foremost, Pakistan has lost control on its credibility. You cannot use terrorism as an instrument of statecraft and then cry foul if those who you have persecuted then do the same to you. So there is life has come full circle from the time of Kandahar hijack of the Indian Airlines plane to the hijacking of this train inside Balochistan. You see, the problem for Pakistan is this: Pakistan since 1947 has been equated with the Punjab province of Pakistan only. So Punjab province is Pakistan and Pakistan is Punjab province. The rest are merely subject who can be subjugated, tortured, persecuted and exploited. You see, even today you can ask Mr. Bilal, the real anger of the people of Balochistan is against the Punjab province of Pakistan. And you see
Exactly.
the inflection point of the entire issue as it is happening today is 2018, from when President Trump in his first tenure stopped the aid to Pakistan for war against terror, so-called war against terror. Majority of those funds were being used by Pakistan for persecution in Balochistan. And at the same time, you will see Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan people have come together. So the problem is this: today Pakistan doesn't even have the funds, forget about the will, to actually fight it out either in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or in Balochistan.
But
And on the
they're going to
other hand,
respond. Let's not be naive to say nothing
they
is
have
going to
no
happen.
option.
There will be
They
a
have no
response.
option. No, I agree, Rishabh. There will be a response, but Pakistan army is today not in a position to have a sustained war. That's what I'm saying. They are not in a position to have a sustained war. And what will you bomb? Because there is nothing left in Balochistan. You can't control barren lands. In many of the garrisons where the army is still existing in Balochistan, they simply do not come out of the garrison. That is the problem. And today Balochistan do not have a paucity of weapon systems because Pakistan's greatest ally America has left behind enough in Afghanistan. That is being routed here.
Okay, so the capacity to response is limited, but there will be a response. General Katoch, now the competence of the response, the judiciousness of the response, the efficacy of the response, we'll have to see. But it will be naive to think that the Pakistani army, its air force, potentially will have to be bombing their own territory. Potentially heavy weaponry will be deployed within its own soil with something which is alien to you and me, but we might see this happen in the next few days.
Rishabh, I'm quite certain they will attempt to use their air force. But I can assure you, from the air, from a fighter aircraft, or even from a helicopter, they cannot pick up a target whom they wish to eliminate. They may kill a few civilians here and there, but beyond that, nothing. They will attempt. They will have some of their informers. They are going to catch a few people. They are going to torture them. 10, 20, 50, 100, 200 youths are going to be taken in, and they are going to be brutally tortured and executed. Again, they'll be part of that enforced disappearance which is taking place. But take it from me, as a military personnel who has spent half his life in these areas, the Pakistan military does not have the capacity to carry out sustained operations on a wide stretch as Balochistan is. It is game, set and match. They can't do it. The army cannot do it. I'm making a very, very specific statement. They can move the tanks around here and there. A tank can't find out who's the militant. A tank can't find out who's the freedom fighter. A tank can't find out who's the man with the gun. They can't do it. That requires hard.
Will they try? Will they deploy the howitzers and the tanks and the air force? Do you suspect there's a high chance that's going to happen? That there'll be some sort of assault that takes place?
Absolutely. If there is some areas which they consider no-go, where they cannot move in, they will deploy their artillery and their air force. I'm not saying they won't do it. I'm certain they will do it. My point is, it is not going to be effective. As a tool of containing violence of this nature, the air and artillery are not the right instruments. You require well-trained troops on the ground.
Okay.
And then you have to keep them there for a very long period of time, possibly 2 years to 5 years. They can't do it.
No, let's face it. In similar terrain, America and NATO failed against an adamant and tenacious foe. So you're not expecting the Pakistani army to do any better. Now let's look at concerned parties. There's a neighbor to the west, Iran. There's a neighbor, Afghanistan. The Chinese are concerned parties. India should be a concerned party. The Americans are concerned parties. So, Ambassador Mukherjee, at what point of time does this cease to be the internal affair of Pakistan?
It ceased to be an internal affair of Pakistan a long time ago, when it was annexed against the wishes of the Baluchi people. And I would like the Pakistani deep state to reflect that it is against international law to use your armed forces against your own people. And the Baluchis continue to be citizens of Pakistan. So if they use their heavy artillery, etc., as General Katoch said, it will be regarded as attempt to genocide. And all American aid, whatever little is left, and EU will be cut off immediately, because the rules are very strict. If you are committing genocide against your people, you do not get international assistance from the West. That's my first point. The second point is that use of air power. as was rightly said by an American historian, Rishabh. He said that use of air power is like having an affair rather than marriage because it provides gratification without commitment. I thought that was a brilliant statement. It was about the shock, power, and awe used against Saddam. The air power, I don't think is even going to get gratification because can you imagine what would happen to the Pakistani pilot if he is shot down in Balochistan and taken prisoners? I would say my prayers for him. And I don't know how many people they'll be able to round up, but I can assure you that today they are in a situation where the Baloch Liberation Army can even attack the Pakistani army garrisons which are in Balochistan because they are isolated from all sides. They are like little islands existing there, terrified, sitting inside the garrison. That is not a good situation to be in. They were actually, in a military terms, I would ask General Katosh for confirmation, in a better position in 71 in Bangladesh, in East Pakistan, than what they are today in Balochistan. In East Pakistan, they had solid ground force there. That is why they were able to rape, kill, and commit genocide, and to push so many refugees across the border into West Bengal, my home state. Take on one hand, Baluchi insurgents, and on the other hand, they've already been thrashed by Israel. They would be very, very careful before they get into another very, very tricky and very uncertain civil war inside Balochistan.
Okay.
I would, with those of my co-panelists, to say that it's game, set, and match. It's all over for Pakistan.
Okay. Patikrit,
to break free finally.
Patikrit, if Balochistan becomes a de facto entity within the next few weeks, is it then therefore inevitable, or what happens to the Pashtun areas which are called Pakhtunistan, to the Sindh areas which is called Sindhu Desh? Is it inevitable that it will not stop only in Balochistan?
Well, I think the initial actually trigger started from the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa region itself. You see the series of attacks first were in that region and then in the Baloch region it started. See, I'll tell you one thing, for all practical purposes, officially these regions are still part of the map of Pakistan, but in reality, the reality is very different. In Balochistan, I don't think, the kind of armored vehicles, the armored surveillance that was there even with the trains traveling, and still they could not do anything. In Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, I think Pakistan has already given up. In case of POK, we know what the reality is. So as I stated, every problem eventually needs to have a political solution, whether it is in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or it is in Balochistan. You never saw the willingness on the part of Punjab, of Islamabad, to have a political solution, to have a political dialogue. They were never mainstream. They were always used for other purpose. They were always, you see, the entire process of CPEC, there was no inclusion of the people of Balochistan or their aspirations. It could have done wonders, but they were not ever interested. That is where the superiority perception of Punjab province in Pakistan is actually hitting them. So I'll tell you, the trigger has already started. They remain restricted in their own garrisons. They simply cannot fight a long-term war today. And that is why you see, in spite of so much of terror attacks in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa by the TTP, you do not see a large-scale retribution by Pakistan Army, because they know that in every nook and corner of Sindh, there is an Afghan settling who can become a suicide bomber.
Okay.
So in reality, what you stated has already started.
Amjad Mirza, are we looking at the beginning of the balkanization, the breakup of Pakistan, not into just Balochistan, but perhaps a Sindhu Desh, a Pakhtunistan and others? Is it now inevitable?
I'm trying to unmute. Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Well, balkanization of Pakistan is already in process. Pakistan is only being held together by force of the Pakistan military. Pakistan used to very proudly, the Pakistan army and the state media used to claim that Pakistan has a relation of the kalme ka rishta between Balochistan and Pakistan and East Pakistan and West Pakistan and POJK and and Pakistan. But the situation is that today you cannot raise a flag or have a flag on the back of your motorbike and travel in anywhere in Balochistan. You cannot raise Pakistani flag in POJK. If you go out with a Pakistani flag on 14th of August on your motorbike, people stone pelt you. People throw
So, do you
stones
think
at you.
that there are going to be people in POK, in Pakhtunistan, perhaps even Sindhis, who are watching carefully the developments in Balochistan and perhaps might now act?
Well, as far as POJK is concerned, their WhatsApp groups are very seriously discussing and getting inspiration from Baloch, and they are following what is going on and unfolding in Balochistan. They
Okay.
are very inspired. The problem in POJK is that they still have to come up with a unified narrative for freedom and independence and reunification with India. The problem is that the nationalist forces in POJK are still playing the game of the British and the Pakistani military establishment by claiming that hame azadi chahiye.
Okay. So, the
There is
answer is
no
it's
such thing. We
so,
have to join India. That's simple
so
as
the
that.
answer is complicated. Bilal
Yes.
Baloch, is it potentially the end of the road, as many others here seem to think? Are we looking at the cusp of something dramatic happening in Balochistan? Perhaps either a protracted war with the Pakistani army or a breakaway?
No, we all know one thing very clearly, that when I see Pakistan army, they are working, they are fighting for the money. I know we people know that in remote areas of the Punjab, when nobody get job, they will take them in army, they will appoint them in the rang route. But on the other side, Baloch as a vision, they are ready. I mean, when you go to the join any force, they will teach you how to protect yourself. I mean, safety first. But in other side, they are ready to die for their own motherland. This is the main issue. I think this is separating everything clearly. I don't think so. Pakistan army, and first of all, how can they know where is the gorillas? This is a guerrilla war. This is not that they are keep shelling on the mountain from the decade, but they are not going to know where they are. This is their tactics. When they do any action, they will just go and disappear and disguise and be in the common citizen. So
Okay.
this is their main policy, and this is their main, you can say, tactics, and
So,
they are
is
using. And we have seen-
Balochistan closer at the cusp of breakaway, sir?
Of course, there is no need to say. We like Amjad Mirza told you, it is already done. The problem is there is I told you there is a blackout. Just Pakistan announced today there is a referendum in the Balochistan. You can see the anger of the Baloch against the Punjab.
All right. Well, that's not going to happen. So, now let me get General Katoch back in. I'm short of time. I want to go across for a few seconds. General Katoch, there will be a response. Now, whether it's an efficacious response is a separate matter. Now, this can go two ways, sir. Either the Pakistani army gets ruined finally in the attempt, or indeed this becomes a pretext for a further military coup in Pakistan. Which way do you see it going, sir?
Very frankly,
Very
I don't
important
see very frankly, I don't see a military coup taking place. I see a lot of bloodshed and violence which will take place in Balochistan. I see a lot of innocents being killed, and with each Baloch life which sheds its blood, I think the Pakistani state is losing. They are fighting a wrong battle. This is not the way to fight the battle. You've got to get the Baloch leaders on the political table and give them what they want, what they have been asking for 75 years, 80 years. If they don't, they will keep fighting. They have the capacity to fight for a few more years, but a time will come when not a single Pakistani soldier will say,
Okay.
I want to stay in Balochistan.
Okay.
That time,
Ambassador
Rishabh,
Mukherjee,
is coming now.
how will the Chinese and the Americans respond if indeed it becomes inevitable that the balkanization of Pakistan is at our doorstep?
I don't think either China or United States has much control. The United States could not stop the creation of Bangladesh, though they tried their best. The deep state did orchestrate the departure of Sheikh Hasina, but after that the events have gone out of control, out of American hands. And the same is true for the Chinese. They are very alarmed at the targeting of Chinese nationals and their repeated assassinations and the inability of the Pakistani state to protect Chinese nationals. So at some point they will step back also. If it is clear to the Chinese that the Balochistan is going to be free and it is full of resources, the Chinese are as transactional, being an Asian race like India, as President Trump. If they see that it's a good deal for them to recognize Balochistan and then to make a good deal like Trump is trying to do with Zelensky about the rare minerals in Ukraine, they will try to make a deal with the Balochis to develop their resources. They are transactional people. In fact, Asians are transactional by nature. All Asians are transactional, much more than Trump.
Okay.
They will make peace. Why should they hang on to a region which they can see is going into out of control, Rishabh? So I see that Balochis will, but I agree with my co-panelists that there will be a lot of bloodshed and many Balochis will lose their lives before they get there.
Pathikrit, do you suspect the Chinese will give arms, ammunition, planes, tanks to the Pakistani army in case what we suspect is true, that a full-fledged war, not a civil war, a full-fledged war is about to break out in Balochistan?
Not mind to have transaction with the sovereign state of Balochistan if it is a bigger probability than the existence of Pakistan. So right now they will have a wait and watch policy, because for them Gwadar port is more important than the state of Pakistan. So they don't mind to have negotiations in Balochistan. Right now you would see they will not invest too much into the Pakistan army, or they would hope still that their assets are protected by Pakistan army, but if they can't, then they will look other way out. I do not see they would be investing too much into modernization of army anymore, particularly for this purpose.
Okay. Ambassador Mukherjee, other than wait and watch, what can we in India do?
We should alert the international community. We should move the Human Rights Council about an impending genocide in Balochistan. We should use whatever we have, resources we have. We should not get directly involved, so that when they get free, the Pakistanis don't say that they got free because of us. They got free because it was a war of self-determination fought by the patriotic Balochis themselves. So we have to be careful not to get directly involved. But we have so many resources, so many allies in the West, in the region, and we have our multilateral card to play. We should embarrass the Pakistanis. We should take up the case of impending genocide in Balochistan, and we should point out, just as they tried to do with us in Kashmir, that this is a war of self-determination where the Balochis cannot be called terrorists. They are freedom fighters fighting for their country. We should use the same language with Pakistan.
Ladies and gentlemen,
with us on Kashmir.
I say this with seriousness and care and caution, because uncertain things have uncertain results. But what we can be certain of is that Pakistan is rapidly on the slippery slope to head into what has already happened in places like Sudan, in Somalia, in Lebanon, in Syria, where the ruling establishment cannot really have control of authority far beyond its immediate capital and centers of power, which means in the case of the Pakistani establishment, Islamabad, Rawalpindi and Lahore. Even in Karachi, in Quetta, you will start seeing Pakistan's inability to govern itself, and what is impending almost seems you are going to see all out war. I can't qualify it as civil war, but it will be all out war, and that's a complicated circumstance, but it seems to be at our door. I thank my guests. We continue to track this as developments come in on a daily basis, and in fact an hourly basis. See you in a minute.